Morning.
So, happy Monday, first of all. And I am so excited to be talking to you because I've been on a health kick recently, and one of the things I've been trying to get into is meditation.
Okay.
I even downloaded your app, which is amazing. I need your help, dude. I really need your help. So first, talk to me about this book. What prompted this book?
This book was, and good morning, everybody. So this book was, I guess, really a result of my time away training as a Buddhist monk. And I actually wrote this quite early on, and before a lot of the success we've had with the app. And it was really to try and bring a little bit of the Himalayas to the West and kind of help try and tell the story, not only of how I learned, but how the stories of how I learned are relevant to living the lives that we do now, you know.
What do you want people to get out of it, aside from embracing meditation and that specific lifestyle?
Yeah, I hope it demystifies a lot of the ideas around meditation. I think for a lot of people, it's a scary idea. It's perhaps a little alien to sit down without anything to do at all. I also wanted to bring a bit of humor and playfulness to it. I think meditation is so often seen as almost a little kind of, a little serious, a little try-hard, a bit pretentious, a little pious. And I just wanted to have some fun with it and say, actually, you know, if you bring the right spirit to meditation, the right approach, it's a really enjoyable journey. And it can be fun, you know. It's rather than thinking of it as work and a chore that you have to do in the day, it's a treat. It's like 5-10 minutes in the day when you don't have to do anything. You don't have to check your phone. You don't have to pick up any messages. There's nothing to do for 10 minutes. And I think that's a rare and beautiful thing.
Well, what I love about your app, as opposed to other meditation apps, and there's a whole bunch of them out there, is that you don't do that thing of like, you must sit with your legs crossed. You must close your eyes now. If you think of something, shut that thought out. I mean, literally, there are apps that are like, if there's a thought in your head, pretend it's not there. Which I'm like, how do you do that?
It's not a real thing, right? I mean, just because we sit down and set our body up in a certain position and close our eyes, like, why should the mind suddenly stop thinking? It won't. And if you look back traditionally, that's not really the way meditation was ever taught. You know, the way it was taught in the past was, you know, learning how to step back from our thoughts and to witness them coming and going. And as you do that, so they then calm down. And instead, we kind of bring this Western kind of control, this idea of control, where, okay, right, got to shut everything out. Mm-hmm. And I think as well, very often, coming back to the maybe other apps or things that are out there, other ways of presenting meditation. I know it's from growing up as well. So often it's somebody talking like this and just calm down. Like, who speaks like that? That's not real, you know. And
with nature sounds in the background.
Exactly. And my experience of being a monk, I never ever met any teachers who spoke like that. They spoke as normal.
They didn't speak to you like this, Andy. Please sit down and cross your legs.
Not so much. No. So I think just bringing that kind of, you know, as I say, a sense of playfulness, of humor, and accessibility to meditation. That was the idea behind Headspace.
I want you to talk a little bit about all the health benefits, because just, I think on Sunday, the New York Times ran another story espousing all the health benefits of the different types of meditation, which I think is really becoming accepted by the medical community now.
Yeah, it really is. And it's changed massively. So if I look back at the time, you know, when I was a monk, I had no idea at the time that even some of my own teachers were being flown across the world and they were sticking them inside scanners and looking to see what was happening in their brain. I think over the last 10, 15 years in the introduction of fMRI scanning, it allows us to see what's happening in the brain before, during, and after meditation. And it's incredible, you know. I think for most of us, we assume that we're born with the brain that we have, and, you know, we get to a certain point in life and then it just degenerates. And this idea that actually by sitting down and training the brain on a regular basis, training the mind, we can actually change the shape of our brain, we can change the way in which it works. I think it's quite a new idea, a really exciting idea for me as well, because I think when you talk about meditation, it's quite an intangible idea. And like to actually look at pictures and say, wow, well, that bit of the brain, which is associated with feelings of happiness and well-being, that's actually more active right now. And as a result, it's getting thicker and stronger. And as a result, you're going to experience more happiness in your life. I think it's a really, it's amazing to see it in black and white in that way. But it's not just what happens in the brain, it's also how it reduces our stress levels, how it brings down our cortisol levels, how it decreases, for many people, or normalizes blood pressure. There's really good science now around the reduction of stress, anxiety, and depression in particular. So really kind of broad application, really broad benefits.
One of the things that you say in your exercise on your app is to breathe in and out loudly. So
just to begin with, at the very beginning. Yeah.
How do you get rid of that self-consciousness?
Yeah, it's funny, especially when you meditate in groups. So we used to do really kind of big events, and we'd have hundreds of people, and it'd be like, okay, for the first 2 or 3 breaths, I want you to breathe really, breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth, really. And I couldn't hear a thing. And I was like, well, there's hundreds of you. I can't hear you. And it's like we get really kind of self-conscious about these things. I think if you're on your own using the app and you're at home, then there's no reason to be self-conscious. And it is just the first couple of breaths. It's really just to clear out all the stale air so that you start afresh. Once you're into the meditation, you can just breathe in a natural way. But self-consciousness gets in the way of not just our meditation. It gets in the way of our entire life. And for me, the fascinating thing about meditation is when we sit to meditate, we're training in awareness. And when we train in awareness, there's good news and bad news. The good news is that we become more aware of those parts of the mind that are very light and spacious and relaxed. But we also become more aware of those parts of the mind that perhaps have a tendency to be a bit anxious or tense. And we see everything. And so it takes a little bit of time and confidence to sit with that and allow it to kind of just to play out and the momentum of those negative thought patterns to fade away.
When I try meditation, I always find myself checking the clock. I can't help it. I'm like, oh, this is another thing I have to do, 5 more minutes. How do you get past that?
So I would say little and often, So it's something we've worked towards. When I left the monastery, so in the monastery, the session, in the Tibetan monasteries, the sessions are about 3 or 4 hours. Oh. And so when I went back to England and I started in a clinic, and the sessions were an hour long with people. So I was thinking, well, I can't do the whole hour, and I started trying to shorten it to try and find a period of time that felt like long enough to have benefit, but not so long to be off-putting. And eventually we kind of found this sort of 10 15 minutes. As we progressed, I've been really surprised. I've been encouraged to try shorter and shorter ones, often against my will. And I've been really amazed. People seem to be able to get something from 2 minutes, from 3 minutes. And in a way, like, who am I to say that that's not enough time? So we're encouraging people now. If 10 minutes feels like too long, start with just a couple of minutes. There are sessions right now on there that are as short as 3 minutes, and just build up slowly.
Maybe that's what I'll have to do, because the point I want to get to myself is where I can just shut off the phone and not think about other things, like focus on what's in front of me, as opposed to 10 things ahead of me,
So what I would recommend is that you press play, or first you put it on airplane mode, so you're not going to be disturbed by the phone at all. Press play, and then just turn the phone over. It will let you know, or I'll let you know when the 10 minutes is up. And then it's just, it's going to end at 10 minutes. You don't even need to kind of think about the phone. Do you know what it is in your mind as you're going through it? Do you know what it is that kind of makes you want to check? Is it a feeling of like physical discomfort, not wanting to sit
anxiety,
still?
I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. One of the things that meditation is so good at is reducing that.
Exactly. So as much as possible, I think when we start meditating, what tends to happen is rather than thinking about a meeting we've got to go to, or the laundry, or whatever else we might be thinking about, instead we start thinking about the exercise. So we're sitting there and we're focusing on the breath, and we start thinking, am I doing this in the right way? Oh, this is taking so long, and I wonder when it's going to finish. Well, that's still thinking. And we have to treat that thinking in exactly the same way as we would any other. So as much as possible, it's catching those thoughts and going, oh yeah, that's thinking, and coming back to the breath again, rather than buying into the thought and thinking, oh yeah, it has been a long time. I wonder if I should check my phone. Yeah, let me check my phone. Oh look, there's a message from a friend, and then suddenly forgetting that we were meditating.
Now, what was it like at the monastery?
I mean, I loved it. It's probably an acquired taste. I think it's an amazing environment. I mean, for people who want to really kind of go deep with meditation, and you want to kind of study for long periods of time, it's an amazing environment. It's a really conducive environment. Everybody is there with the same kind of single-minded intent. And the teaching there is unparalleled. You know, it's hard to imagine anywhere in the world where you can get that kind of access to those teachers on a daily basis.
And your backstory is so interesting. Tell me about how you started out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's interesting.
I think it's really
this is my life, but yeah, I was very lucky. I started out with my parents, so with my mum. I had a very progressive mum who was doing meditation when I was about 10 or 11 years old.
really no one did it back then. I mean, it
Not
was
so
definitely
much.
not as accepted as it is today.
And it was a long time ago, trust me. So
Last year, you mean?
yeah, well, you know. So this was a long time ago, and I think a lot of people still thought it was very kind of fringe. But as kids, we just went along with mum, and we started learning, and I did it sort of through my early teenage years. Found it hugely beneficial. Then it dropped off the radar a little bit as other things took over as a teenager, and then it was sort of later. It was in my kind of late teens, early 20s that it started to become a bit more of a thing, you know. And a few things happened in my late teenage years where it got me to question kind of life and to ask some big questions. And my response to that was to go away and become a monk.
How has the practice of meditation directly impacted your life? And I'm thinking like real examples, like you're waiting for the subway and it's not coming, where I'm like freaking out and looking in the tunnel and being all stressed.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely not a lot of that if you do a lot of meditation. I think on one level, I mean, at the broadest possible level, it impacts every single moment of every single day. I think we're talking about the mind, and when we meditate, we're not just dealing with the software, the different elements of our life, we're dealing with the hardware. And if you change the hardware, then it changes the way all of the software kind of works and appears. So I think probably the biggest thing is a sense of perspective, you know, recognizing that life is serious, you know, there are serious things in life, but at the same time, not to take life too seriously, you know, recognizing that change is inevitable. And I think we live as human beings, we like to have a feeling of control. And so we're trying to often to avoid change, you know. And I think meditation, just sitting and witnessing those thoughts and those feelings coming and going, it becomes evident that actually life is continually changing, and we don't need to fight that. If we kind of embrace it, then we find a place of acceptance. So it's, I think, definitely a greater sense of calm, a greater sense of clarity. The result of that is a greater sense of contentment. And then the knock-on from that, which I think is the most important, and I think it's the least kind of talked about in meditation in the West, is this idea of compassion or empathy. And I'm not suggesting that I sit here as some example of a great compassionate person, but I'm definitely kinder now than I was when I set off on that journey. And I don't just mean outwardly, I mean inwardly to myself. You know, I think we all tend to be very tough on ourselves. There's a lot of inner chatter that goes off that's often very kind of negative and judgmental. And that often extends to others as well. And I just think this idea, it's not just about being calmer. It's about how do we live a healthier and happier life where we're actually kinder, to ourselves and to others as well.
What's your meditation routine? Is it morning and night?
So my meditation routine is primarily morning. It's changed a little bit since we had a baby. He's now 2, and he's kind of growing out at that early morning phase, but he still wakes up at about kind of 5 in the morning.
Kids are so selfish.
I know. I mean, seriously, right? But I do the morning, like the morning shift is mine. So if he wakes up at 4:30, then I'm doing 4:30 to 6:30, and I have to do my meditation later in the day. I'm very lucky that I work in an environment where we actively encourage meditation, as you would expect. So I disappear into my recording studio and do it there.
And by the way, can you do it anywhere?
Absolutely.
Like you could go in an office right here and just do it.
Completely.
Location is irrelevant.
It's completely irrelevant. So much so. To begin with, I think it's helpful if you're in a place where you're not going to be disturbed too much. You don't want your dog jumping all over you. That's going to be quite distracting. But you could do it sitting on a bus on your way to work or in the back of a taxi. I would encourage people, to begin with, to do it in one place. But I try and start every day with an hour. I have practices that I still do from when I was in the monastery. Obviously, I often get asked whether I use the app. Using the app would be really weird. And
hearing your own voice telling you what to do.
And ever so slightly narcissistic to sit there listening to myself for an hour every morning. So I don't use the app, but I do recommend it.
And let's turn it over to our audience, please.
Hi, Andy.
Hi.
Thank you for being here. So, what was your favorite philosopher that you admired, and what was your favorite quote of him? If you have a favorite quote of that particular philosopher.
Yeah, good question. Well, I'm shamefully ignorant in most things, actually. But I didn't study a lot of philosophy before I went away. So most of my philosophy or psychology, I guess, comes from the Tibetan teachers that I trained with. A lot of them were incredibly inspiring. There was one in particular called Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. And he was really responsible for taking it out of a religious context and making it a bit more, it sounds ironic because he was a monk, but making it a bit more secular and available in Tibet. And I found that really inspiring. And he had this, I don't remember the exact quote word for word, but it went something like this: of all the people who have heard of meditation, only a few think about doing it. Of all the people who think about doing it, only a few try. Of only a few trying, kind of only a few stay with it. And of all those people who stay with it, only a few kind of have the discipline and commitment to experience the benefits of it. And for me, that was incredibly inspiring on my journey to kind of just to remember that it's not about talking about it. I know we're doing that now, but it's not about thinking about it. It's not enough, you know. It's like walking around with a fancy pair of Nike trainers and expecting to be fit, as an example. Like, it doesn't work like that. It's not enough to have the book. You know, we actually have to sit down and to do the practice. And for me, that's the most important thing.
Next question, please.
Hey, Andy. Thank
Hi.
you for being here. What are your thoughts on the use of aromatherapy?
Aromatherapy. I mean, I don't know if I have anything particularly valuable to add. Only, again, having grown up in the household that I did, we grew up having aromatherapy and acupuncture from about the age of 8 or 9 years old. It's something very kind of familiar to me. It's not something that I have any great knowledge about, but I've certainly experienced the benefits of it over the years. And look, I think just generally in our life, it's really helpful to think about it in a holistic way. You know, meditation, if we're out at night and we're getting hammered every night, then we might not see, you know, even if we're meditating, we're probably not going to experience kind of the best state of health and happiness. So if we can kind of start thinking about lots of different areas of our life, you know, whether it's physical exercise, whether it's nutrition, see meditation as part of that. And yeah, maybe for some people there are other kind of elements, whether it's massage or aromatherapy or other parts of it. Then I think that's great. Yeah.
And last question, please.
Hi, thanks so much for being here. I actually use this app, but the problem is that I tend to feel guilty not doing so, like taking the 15 minutes to meditate. And so I'll use it when I'm at the point of breaking, which is helpful, but I should probably use it more. So how do you kind of get past that feeling of guilt?
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a really good point. When we look at our community, and there's probably, I think there's over 9 million people now, and when we look at kind of how different people use it, it's really interesting. There are 3 very distinct groups. There are those that we call sort of vitamin type users, so it's preventative, it's kind of daily basis, trying not even to get to the point where you feel stressed and you're breaking. There's the aspirin users who kind of wait until they feel really stressed and then they use it to feel less stressed. And then there are people who kind of save it for life's sort of big events. I do think it's quite common. We live in such a sort of a driven society that the idea of, especially in New York, you know, I mean, the idea of taking 10 minutes out of our day to do nothing, I mean, it sounds obscene in New York. But if we don't, I think it's just important to remember that what are the implications, you know, not only for ourselves, but also for the people around us. So I would encourage anyone who's thinking about meditation, think about your motivation. Not only kind of about feeling calmer and clearer for yourself, but how you are to the people around you. Like, we're all the same, right? If you think about friends who are always kind of angry, or it's probably not that pleasant to kind of be around, you know? And the thing that we can do, the one thing that we can do and have responsibility for in this world is the condition of our own mind, and there's a ripple effect to that. And when we're kind and compassionate to the person next to us, there's a very good chance that they will go on and do the same to the person next to them. And I think if there's enough of us in the world behaving in that way, then there's extraordinary potential.
And the book is available now on Amazon?
It is, and if anyone's around this evening, they want to come down to Barnes & Noble in Tribeca at 6 o'clock, I'll be down there. That's
amazing. And what about the app?
Yes, so the app, you can download it from iTunes or Google Play Store. It's free to download, and actually it's free to use. There's a section on there, you can use it for as long as you want for free. If you want to go deeper, then yes, you can subscribe, and there's lots of other stuff on there. If you want to hear more about the app, I will be at the Apple Store in Soho tomorrow at 7 o'clock.
Thank you so much, Andy.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.